Welcome to That Bible Guy, where we equip God's people to share. We've just finished our last series on the top 10 objections. We're about to start a new series, a very exciting series, which I'll talk about maybe very soon. But what I want to look at today, it's the start of 2021. We've got halfway through January. What I want to look at today is 2021, the secret to achieving our goals as Christians, our faith goals, the things that God has put on our heart. The secret will be revealed today. It's a very simple thing, but it is nonetheless extremely important. It's not about how you start, it's about how you finish. Have you heard this before? No doubt you have. As Christians, this is particularly pertinent that we make it to the promised land, but also that we achieve and fulfill on the goals, tasks, and plans that God has given us. I hope we have that sense this year that God is calling us to do different things, even in the midst of lockdown. God has put things on our heart. So the secret to this success of achieving these things is very simple, which we'll look at in a moment. It's all too often that we fail, isn't it? It's all too often that we don't see things through to the very end. When I decided to start college and eventually going to university, I knew I'd failed or at least not completed tasks in the past, that I decided to write myself a note. I wrote a note, I put it on my cupboard, and I said, I commit to seeing this all the way through. It was a 6-year journey, and I thought, I have to put this somewhere visible. I'm making this specific plan. I did see it through, and I kept the note, and I knew this will help me to be resolute in my plans. We want to see our goals through. God has called us to things this year that we want to reach the very end in these tasks, and look back and say, we've done what God had called us to do. So, the secret will be revealed. We're going to look at a couple of scriptures and you'll notice the theme. The first one is Matthew 14, verses 25. Let's dig in and see what is it that I need to know this year that will help me to see these goals through, these things that could be challenging, that may be things that I've not done before. So Matthew 14, and it tells us in verse 25, is all about Peter walking on the water. It says, shortly before dawn, Jesus went out to them walking on the lake. When the disciples saw him walking on the lake, they were terrified. It's a ghost, they said, and cried out in fear. But Jesus immediately said to them, take courage. It is I, don't be afraid. Thank goodness. Lord, if it's you, Peter replied, tell me to come to you on the water. Come, he said. Then Peter got down out of the boat, walked in the water, and came towards Jesus. But when he saw the wind, he was afraid, and beginning to sink, cried out, Lord, save me. Immediately Jesus reached out his hand and caught him. You of little faith, he said, why did you doubt? I was sharing this last night in a sermon, and I said, what would we say to Peter? We always say, well done, Peter. You got out of the boat. And it is true. He got out of the boat. There was some faith there. What was Jesus' response? You have little faith, why did you doubt? Jesus expected him to be able to do it all. He expected him with the faith that he had, if he had kept his eyes on Jesus, not on the storm, a little bit of the secret revealed there, then that would have helped him to get to Jesus. And he would have fulfilled his task. And it would have been celebratory. I suspect he still celebrated having walked on the water, even just for a short period of time. We're going to see the same thing in Paul, and we'll talk about what this is in a second. Philippians chapter 4. This is our other scripture on, what is the secret to being able to see it through? Now, before we look at Philippians 4, 12 to 13 here and hear Paul's attitude, we've really got to know something. In 2 Corinthians, Paul described his predicament as a Christian. He had been shipwrecked. He had been flogged, beaten, whipped. He had been hungry. He had been starving. He had gone without friends. People had abandoned him. He had to run from place to place. He had had an absolutely tumultuous time as a Christian. And even many of the believers struggled to believe in who he was or to trust in him because he had went to persecute all the Christians. He then ended up in jail. And yet, for some reason, he kept the faith to the very end. And his attitude and the revelation of how he managed this is in Philippians chapter 4, verse 12. He said, I know what it is to be in need, and I know what it is to have plenty. I have learned the secret of being content in any and every situation, whether well-fed or hungry, whether living in plenty or in want. I can do all things, all this even through him who gives me strength. Paul revealed the secret of his contentment. Peter in his interaction on the water also revealed for me the secret to seeing things through that are tough, challenging, unaccustomed, new, difficult, that we want to do this year for God, that we want to step out and do. The secret here is revealed. What is the secret? It's all about where you look. When Peter looked at Jesus, he walked on the water. When he took his eyes off Jesus, you inevitably look somewhere else. You look at the storms. You look at the difficulties. You're aware of your inadequacies and limitations. Paul had went through incredible challenges, and he said, I've learned the ability to be content, whether it's an awful situation or not, if I keep my eyes fixed on Jesus. He's the one that gives me strength. What does this mean for us? Two things. It means that we don't have to worry about our weaknesses. We don't have to worry about our lack of knowledge, our lack of ability, our fear, our lack of impure motivations. We don't have to fear the weaknesses that we bring. The second thing, we don't have to fear what the world throws at us this year. Lockdowns, sickness, viruses, pandemics, elections, riots, uprisings. What justice is going to be not delivered on this year? What's going to happen? Who knows? Deaths and terrible things that we want to pray for. But these things can make us feel like this year cannot be successful. Paul and Peter both revealed the secret here. Paul explicitly states, if I look in the right place, I can do this. And the scriptures tell us again in Hebrews chapter 12, the scriptures tell us this explicitly. And again, this for me is the model for this year of achieving the things that God has put on my heart or in the future will put on my heart this year. Hebrews chapter 12, it says, therefore, since we are surrounded by such a great cloud of witnesses, in Hebrews 11, the hall of faith, let us throw off everything that hinders and the sin that so easily entangles, and let us run with perseverance the race marked out for us, fixing our eyes on Jesus, the pioneer and perfecter of faith. For the joy set before him, he endured the cross, scorning its shame, and sat down at the right hand of the throne of God. Consider him who endured such opposition from sinners. Why? So that you will not grow weary and lose heart. Looking at Jesus, fixing our eyes on Jesus, considering him is what will prevent us from growing weary and losing heart with whatever tasks we set ourselves this year. Maybe it's just remaining faithful in the midst of lockdown. Maybe it's just hanging on. That's an admirable goal. Whatever it is you feel called to, maybe it's a new ministry, maybe it's reaching out in a new part of the community, giving out so many invites per week, per month, per year, reaching out to family members, initiating forgiveness, being the one that reaches out and steps in to mediate in a very difficult situation, speaking up about something that you believe is right and needs to be said. Whatever it is, looking at Jesus will help us to achieve that. I know it's very simplistic sounding, but it's fixing our eyes on him, not deviating, and also considering him. How can we complete our goals? How can we get back up again? It's all about where we're looking. I want to reach out. It's a very, well, it's not too short. It's a moderately long poem. It's called The Race. And this is inspiring. And it reflects that idea of where we look is what makes the difference. The whistle blew and off they went. Young hearts and hopes of fire. To win, to be the hero there, was every boy's desire. And one boy in particular, his dad was in the crowd, was running near the lead and thought, my dad will be so proud. But he speeded up down the field across a shallow dip. That little boy who thought to win lost his step and slipped. Trying hard to catch himself, his hands flew out the brace. Amid the laughter of the crowd, he fell flat on his face. So down he fell, and with hope, he couldn't win it now. Embarrassed, sad, he only wished to disappear somehow. But as he fell, his dad stood up and showed his anxious face, which to the boy so clearly said, get up and win the race. He quickly rose, no damage done, a bit behind, that's all, and ran with all his mind and might to make up for his fall. So anxious to restore himself, to catch up and to win, his mind went faster than his legs, he slipped and fell again. He wished that he had quit before with only one disgrace. I'm hopeless as a runner now, I shouldn't try to race. But in the laughing crowd, he searched and found his father's face, that steady look that said again, get up and win the race. So he jumped up to try again, 10 yards behind the last. If I'm going to win gain these yards, he thought, I've got to run real fast. Exceeding everything he had, he regained 8 or 10, but trying so hard to catch the lead, he slipped and fell again. Defeat. He lay there silently, a teardrip from his eye. There's no sense trying any more. 3 strikes, I'm out. Why try? The will to rise had disappeared, all hope had fled away. So far behind, so error-prone, a loser all the way. I've lost, so what's the use, he thought. I'll lie with my disgrace. But then he thought about his dad, who soon he'd have to face. Get up, an echo sounded low. Get up and take your place. You were not meant for failure here. Get up and win the race. With borrowed will, get up, it said. You haven't lost it all. For winning is not more than this, to rise each time you fall. So up he rose to win once more, and with a new commit, he resolved that win or lose, at least he wouldn't quit. So far behind the others now, the most he'd ever been, still he gave it all he had and ran as though to win. 3 times he'd fallen stumbling, 3 times he'd rose again. Too far behind now to hope to win, he still ran to the end. They cheered another boy who crossed the line and won first place. Head high and proud and happy, no falling, no disgrace. But when the fallen youngster crossed the line in last place, the crowd gave him the greater cheer for finishing the race. And even though he came in last, with head bowed low and proud, you would have thought he had won the race to listen to the crowd. And to his dad he sadly said, I didn't do so well. To me you won, his father said. You rose each time you fell. The Race by D. Groberg. There's a few different versions of that. But it basically, he kept repeating the same thing. He fell. He kept going. Why? He's seen the Father's face. Whether he physically seen his face or he pictured the Father's face, and he pictured the Father's face saying, keep going, son. You can do this. I'm proud of you, first or last. And he was proud of him. What do we need to achieve the goals this year that God has put on our heart in 2021? It's to look at the Father, to look at Jesus, rather than our own weaknesses, rather than the troubles that are surround us. Keep our eyes fixed on Jesus. I pray we can do that, and we do that successfully this year, and we can share about the incredible victories that I know we can all achieve this year. God is an incredible God, and he can enable us to do that. Hope you've liked this today. Please hit the like button if you have. Please share this on to inspire other people to see what they can achieve this year with keeping their eyes fixed on Jesus. Please also subscribe to That Bible Guy, and if you're so inclined, sign up through Patreon to the ministry. Thanks for listening, and let's get his word out there.